Welcome back to It's Too Damn... Oh, wait. Sorry, did you say it is hot where you are?
It was hot, and then we had a giant thunderstorm, and now it's starting to clear up.
It's too damn cool right now, because of the thunderstorm, okay, whatever.
And wet.
And wet.
Really
yeah.
wet.
I could go for a thunderstorm right now. Yeah, well, I guess I can't complain where I am right now. It's like 21 degrees, which is like room temperature, right? But you guys aren't here to hear us talk about temperature. You're here to hear us talk about video games. Welcome back to Max
All the
News.
hot games coming in August. The hot games. So many games. Oh my god.
Armored Core 6 and Baldur's Gate 3 taking up all of our times. Yeah, and then in September, and then in October, and then November, it's first world problems. There's too many games for us to get to. We'll figure it out, though. But anyways, we're not going to be talking about any of those games today. We got a lot of other unrelated news to all the games that are coming out soon, but really, really interesting stuff. 4 major stories that we're talking about today. The first one, I gave off to Syb, even though I wanted to look into it myself. But yeah, it's puzzling, Syb. And I'll explain why in a second, but I'm going to let you just sort of do the main story bit here. Apparently, we're getting maybe a remake for The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant this other huge news that just came out today, just like hot off the presses.
What's that?
Today, of course, the biggest news for gaming probably of the summer up till like probably Baldur's Gate. Of course, everybody loves it. They want it. Lord of the Rings Gollum got its final update today.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
So they fixed it, right?
Well, fixing it is a good question. And of course, I'm being completely facetious. Nobody knows about this because they put the game out to a grand total of, I think, 5 people playing it on the Steam charts. It's not a good sign, but I thought that would be kind of a funny, like, lead off. Yeah, no, we've got actual amazing, bizarre. You're right about this, Max. This is very bizarre,
and we'll explain why in a second. But yeah, go ahead.
Elder Scrolls Oblivion. What? Why? How? We'll get into it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's your story, man. So yeah, explain to people what the heck's going on there.
I thought you wanted to lead off with something else.
No.
Okay. So this is a bizarre one. This is a really bizarre one. So the studio that brought you the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake?
No, that's Konami. You're thinking about the people that are helping out Konami, Virtuos.
Yes, right? Virtuos. So Virtuos, the studio, again, obviously not the primary people doing the remake for Metal Gear Solid 3, but one of the assistant studios to it. That's how a lot of this stuff is apparently working on a whole bunch of remasters that are using some very interesting and frankly bizarre tech, if the rumor and this source, air quotes, I'm doing the air quotes, is to be believed.
Okay.
And the primary thing behind this is that apparently they're going to use... So when they're doing these remakes, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be setting up essentially like basically an emulator inside Unreal 5 that runs the old game from the past. So like the old, in this case Oblivion, in the original Oblivion engine. And then Unreal 5 takes all that telemetry, that game world and all that kind of stuff, and basically puts like a new coat of paint on it. I'm simplifying it because again, we don't know how true this is. We don't know if this is true. The contact was supposedly verified by by a handful of people who were able to verify that they were in fact a previous employee and that they had this tech and all that kind of stuff. But this is quite crazy that they're going to be basically the Unreal Engine emulates the older engine playing the older game, and then takes that and just upscales everything within a certain list of parameters. And then also with like they do have to go in and they have to like add improved assets and stuff like that. But there's a lot of that tech is automatically handled by the AI system.
Yeah.
That's why supposedly they could be doing this at the same time as doing several other remakes all at the same time, which is like this tech. It's either going to be absolutely amazing or a nightmare. Like it's going to come off as just a really really terrible, bizarre thing where it's like it's running the original game and then like terraforming everything whilst playing it.
Yeah.
So it is bizarre. Now, I've heard rumors about this tech before, but I've not heard any substantial rumors about this stuff up till now. Now, we've had upscaling before, but not in this degree where you're taking typically that was taking older Unreal Engine games and just having the Unreal game, the new engine just translate the game into, the new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if this is the case, and if this might have so this might be absolutely amazing. It might be very, very bad. And this might be like one of the laziest ways that people take older games and do remakes in them, is just like, hey, Unreal Engine, can you like bring this up to like current day graphics? And then it does it, and then it like tweaks the UI and tweaks the HUD and tweaks the controls so that they kind of fit like a current day thing. But it's not handcrafted. It's just like put through this like essentially just this AI translation matrix. Yeah. So that's the thing where it's like, oh, okay, so this is potentially very bizarre.
Yeah, the technology that we've seen come out over the last couple of years as far as AI upscaling is impressive. Like we remember when we saw that, I think it was NVIDIA, they did a showcase of what Morrowind looked like when they put it through an AI upscaling. And oh my God, Syb, it looked amazing. Yeah, but I don't really think, with even as amazing as Unreal Engine 5 is, I don't think the technology is at a place where you can just take the original code, put it into the source engine, and then just have it work it all out itself. You do need to...
Yeah, one of the bizarre things is that, and this leads to what you're saying, is like the physics engine is apparently being handled by Oblivion.
Yeah,
that's... Oblivion engine at the same time that Unreal is... So I like what you're saying there is like, you're like saying that this sounds kind of like weird, which is my point too, is like, this is like, if they can actually pull this off, then it's probably really, really amazing. And we're probably that one big giant step closer to, having the holodeck where you're like, hey, take this book from the 1800s and turn it into a holo adventure.
Yeah.
And then the computer just does it, which is, I mean, I'm really looking forward to that day, but I think we're still a long ways off. And again, it's like, this makes me go, I bet you there's going to be a lot of really bad problems with this.
There has to be. Like, inevitably, when a new piece of technology is adopted, especially with something like this, it's going to take a few games before you get to a place where it's at the very least playable. And in regards to a game like Oblivion, hearing that it's really just going to be working off of Oblivion's physics system just with upscaled graphics, that's whack. And I don't mean whack in the way that the UK uses it. I mean whack in the bad way. Because, Syb, I don't know if you played Oblivion recently, but the physics in that game suck. They're not good. I have such a... Look, Oblivion is my personal favorite Elder Scrolls game. It shaped a lot of my youth. I played the crap out of that game. I put more hours into that game than either Skyrim or Morrowind. And I have the hardest time going back to that game now because of the way the combat handles, because of the way people walk around, the UI. Exactly. It's ridiculous. And just copying and pasting the source code into the Unreal Engine isn't going to fix that. It needs more tender love and care. Now, I hope, because Virtuos has done pretty good ports for the Switch in the past, and it seems... based on some of the information that we're getting, that they're doing an okay job with the Metal Gear Solid ports, although it does suck that they won't have keyboard support for those who want to play on PC. I don't know what the hell's up with that. But everything else, technically speaking, seems to work. So let's hope that if this is true, that they will go above and beyond just a simple copy and paste job. But there is another thing, Syb, and while what you're bringing up here is bizarre, that's not the bizarre element that I was referring to. I was referring to Skyblivion. You know what Skyblivion is, right? I mean, that's a stupid question. Of course you do. People who don't know, Skyblivion is a mod that has been worked on since 2012 by a bunch of fans. It's totally not for profit, that are trying to take Oblivion, the original game, and port all of its assets, its world, its characters into the Skyrim engine with Skyrim graphics and with Skyrim gameplay and Skyrim combat. It's updating it in that regard. And guys, it looks so good. I'm looking forward to that mod about as much as I'm looking forward to games like Starfield and Alan Wake 2 and Spider-Man 2 and the next game from the guy that made Shadow of the Colossus. All those games, because it looks like the sort of thing that I want from an updated Oblivion, right? Nice, like Unreal Engine 5 graphics are nice. That's fine. But I can get that by watching a 5-minute modding video on YouTube. If the game doesn't play right, if it plays just like Oblivion did back in 2006, I'm not going to be buying that remake or whatever you want to call it, light remake that's coming up from Virtuos. I'm going to be spending all my time with Skyblivion. So yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Like, I suppose like maybe they want to do this for the console people because we know Skyblivion isn't coming to console. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
It's so I think that this is, again, it's like this idea of having very, very lazy game development. And if this is really headed in this current direction, what we could end up seeing is just them, these studios just re-releasing a slew of their old games with like 3 people handling the transition with all the tools that the new engine brings, but I don't think those will feel as good. They might feel better than the original if you try to like plug in the original and try and play it. It's like playing the original KOTOR is like those menus, those options, like just not as good, not as smooth as as things are these days. The HUD, the UI, all that kind of stuff is like there has been several like key
mods.
Upgrades in that as well. So yeah, this is a big question as to, well, how can they pull this off? Are they going to be able to make this like work correctly, make it work good, make it work the way that it needs to? So that's the big question, and we're going to see here. But part of me does wonder is like for a little while now, we've been wondering, how is Konami handling all these projects? Because they, as far as I know, still they haven't gone on a massive hiring spree. They've gotten a lot of other studios to come in and kind of like help them on these projects. So that still makes me kind of sit there and scratch my chin and go,
well,
how are they doing this? But again,
in regards to Metal Gear Solid 3, that's really the only game that they're working on that's been announced, right? And that's an old game, and for that game at least, I'm totally fine if all they do is just a graphical upgrade and keep all the gameplay as it is. That doesn't require that biggest team, right? Unless you're referring to something else that I'm not thinking of.
Like some of the other like projects, again, a lot of the rumors of like what they are working on, that kind of stuff, which again it's like rumors, and it's like
Castlevania.
It's not no, because like we've gotten rumors that they're working on like on more Metal Gear, and then they're
right
some of their other things, and it's like it's not always just the same studio. So, but that is a question. It's like, okay, so for these remakes, perhaps what they're doing is they're using this tech because it's managed to pass some kind of like vertical slice pitch coming out of Epic. Like that's what it leaves me questioning, because again, it's like this. It's so weird that we're hearing this rumor coming from this point at this time. Whereas if this technology was like 100% like totally legit, I'm pretty sure Epic would have had like a big update announcement about it, showcasing what they could do so that they could get more developers on board.
Yeah.
more studios, more IPs. If they really do have the tech to render a game, an older generation game, inside a new engine, take all that physics, all that information from the game, and then just have this basically this translator for it with very minimal effort. We're talking like instead of like taking 5 to 6 years to put this together, it's taken like a year and a half and like a tenth of the original staff. It's like, if that's really what's happening, that I really do think would have been screamed from the rafters by Epic, and they would be pitching absolutely everybody to be like, hey, you need to use this to transform your total history of games and your huge panel of stuff that you've got, in your vaults as far as like IPs and older games, and we can just let you like just automatically translate this into like brand new gameplay, brand new styles, brand new everything, and just make everything so much better instantaneously.
Yeah.
It's like, if that was a thing, I'm pretty sure it would be being shouted from the rooftops right now, not hidden in this weird kind of like, oh yeah, and at the same time we're working on a Monster Hunter Shadow of the Colossus crossover MMO.
Yeah. Which sounds dope.
With Amazon Studios. It's like that really, like, that's where it feels like it's stretching a little bit, because it's like that doesn't add up, right? Like, it's like, well,
right.
Why would Amazon be working with a studio who's currently working with Microsoft, who's currently working with Konami, all at the same time? It's like there seems to be a serious level of like that can't be real. So that's where I'm like, I don't think I believe these rumors.
Right.
But it is an interesting news piece to talk about, because if this is true, then this is going, like, if this is true and this actually works, then this is a complete, like, we're going to have like a complete revolution in the way that games are made, because you're going to be able to go back to an enormous, endless number of games that have been released in the past that you could just slap a translation engine on it and create something completely different, or just like upscale it the absolute, just insane.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point that you made, Saib, and it just further, I think it pretty much just confirms my belief that if this is true, then the technology probably isn't there yet where it won't require some degree of human intervention. If the technology were there, then you're absolutely goddamn right. Epic would be talking all over about it, because if there's one thing Epic is not, it's modest when it comes to Unreal Engine 5. They love showing all the updates that game has, Unreal Engine 5.1, 5.2, and I don't blame them. The stuff that they're showing off is amazing, but I just don't think it's there yet. But when it is, it's like you said, it's going to be a revolution. Question is for you guys. Do you believe these rumors when it comes to the Elder Scrolls Oblivion remake? Would you be inclined to get it if it was just a graphical upgrade and they kept all the mechanics there? Or are you going to be like me and you're looking more forward to Sky Oblivion and Skywind? Let's not forget that. Let me know in the comment section below. All right, let's move on to this next story. This is a little bit depressing. Saib, we rag on Ubisoft a lot, deservedly, I think. But,
deservedly.
I will give them props when they deserve it. Like, most recently, I think it was in this past month, we did a show where we talked about the trailers that they released for their Avatar game and for their Star Wars game. I think it's Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, Star Wars Outlaws. And the trailers look good, at least what they're promising, and based on the stuff that they showed us, I think there's reason to be optimistic, which is like, as somebody who rags on Ubisoft a lot, I find it weird to say, but I feel content and hopeful in saying that. Also, when they put out a good game, I'll give them credit. I think, the last game that I ever purchased that was from Ubisoft was a game called Immortals: Phoenix Rising. That game came out in 2020. And I picked it up because a lot of people have been saying that it was really good. It was according to them, a Breath of the Wild clone, but with sort of a aesthetic based around Greek mythology. And they're right, that's what it was. But it was good. It was really, really good. It was a nice, relaxing game, a nice time waster, and something that you could look back fondly on. And it sold well. I think it sold around 2-3 million copies, if I'm not mistaken. I'll check that. I'll check the exact figure in a second. Unfortunately, I don't have that right in front of me. But it did well enough that if any other studios saw those numbers, they'd be like, okay, we got to get on a sequel. There's potential to create a new franchise here. Well, I got some bad news, guys. Unfortunately, there was a sequel in the works at Ubisoft Quebec, and this is coming from Video Games Chronicle. But they also say that the game got silently canceled. Ubisoft, almost semi-confirming Video Games Chronicle's reporting, actually responded to the article that they did on Immortals Phoenix Rising, saying that they're, quote, redirecting and reallocating some creative teams and resources to unannounced projects in order to accelerate development on those unannounced projects. So basically what that means is that they're taking people off of the team that worked on Immortals Phoenix Rising and the sequel and probably reallocating them to games like Assassin's Creed and their other established IPs like Rainbow Six and the Tom Clancy games and stuff like that. It's a real shame, man. Like especially when we get reports like there's going to be 6 new Assassin's Creed games that are coming out. There's Mirage, there's Codename Red, Codename Jade. There was rumors about that Assassin's Creed Infinity, which is sort of like a live service version of Assassin's Creed. And then
because that's what everybody wants.
Well, listen for a second though. Like, I know you and I don't give a crap about Assassin's Creed. We want to see more games like Immortals Phoenix Rising and games where they're actually taking a risk. But here's the thing. If I recall correctly, it was either Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, one of the last two ones, that sold around 10 million copies, right? Mm-hmm. And to put that into context, you know the Silent Hill franchise? All the games that released in that franchise combined sold around 10 million copies. So that's one game in the Assassin's Creed franchise making buck for Ubisoft. Yeah. And then you have a franchise like Immortals Rising, and according to Video Games Chronicle, at least with Valhalla, it made 70% less than Assassin's Creed Valhalla did over a similar sales period. So given the fact that the world seems to be going more oriented towards well-established IP, recognizable IP that at the very least gives people, something to turn their brains off to and play, it makes sense that Ubisoft would pivot away from that. Plus the fact that Ubisoft has been experiencing a whole bunch of problems when it comes to selling their software lately. I think we also did a podcast on their woes recently, like stuff with their sales for Just Dance 2023, their sales for Mario plus Rabbids, their sales for not sales, but the problems that they're having to deal with Skull and Bones, Beyond Good and Evil 2, the Splinter Cell remake, the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake. It's just an absolute mess over there. So I understand why they're doing it, but I can also say that and simultaneously say that it's a shame that it's come to this point and that they're not taking at least 1 or 2 risks when it comes to stuff that they know they can evolve and make into new and interesting IP, especially with something like Immortals Phoenix Rising, which if they came out with a sequel for that, I would absolutely buy it because it was wonderful. So those are my thoughts on this. Do you agree or disagree with anything that I said?
No, I agree. Like it's yeah. They're clearly, I think really Ubisoft is in a bit of a pinch. They had a lot of success. They started to let it get to, I think they let it get to their heads a little bit, like the founders. It's a big family.
Yeah.
They let too many of those people who were instrumental in building up. And it's not just one or two people. It's like a whole group of people. And this happens to a lot of game studios when they're done a project. Some of the team leads leave. And that's there because of creativity. Where if you work for 5 years on a project and you're super passionate about it, and you work like a crazy like lunatic, just 70, 80 hours a week. Eventually you get to this point where you're just creatively exhausted and you need to take a long break. So what a lot of studio houses do is some of these people leave the studio after they're done the major part, and they take a break for about a year, something like that. Then they find a new house, a new developer, and they move and they do that. That's they continue there. And we can see that this was great for a short period of time, but it leaves studios in a hole creatively when they need to then continue that work. And we've seen this in a handful of studios, and we're seeing it get worse and worse and worse. Whereas other studios, like Larian and Bethesda, that have a very, very low turnover rate. Bethesda has a ridiculously low turnover rate. They are really like a family at the Maryland studio. Some of the other studios, they have much higher turnover rates. Some of the Austin studios and whatnot are pretty high, much more industry standard kind of thing. But the Maryland studio, a lot of those people have been working together for like 20 plus years. A lot of them. And so stuff like that is where I think when we look at Ubisoft, they haven't had this like formation of like training and growing their creative talent,
Yeah.
and really fostering it as a natural like garden where it's like when something does leave, something is right there to take its place and to grow up even bigger and that kind of stuff. And it's like, and because I don't think they've been focusing on that. Instead, over the last few years, they have been focusing a lot on, of course, all the scandals. That doesn't help either, because
Right.
when you're doing that,
Forgot
all
about
of your
that.
energy, all your energy is going towards, crisis management and not creative management. And so I think that's a big thing that's been happening for a while now. Ubisoft has probably been the victim of a lot of their own success in a lot of ways. They and clearly, I think the biggest screw ups really have been a lot of the problems that they faced in the crisis department. I think those were things that if they weren't there, and if they had been more focused on actually like maintaining stuff properly, I think that stuff would have come out a whole lot better. And that's probably the core of their problem. I think if you could back up probably 15 years and just replace some of those people at the head of the studio that were having wild success mostly through luck than through hard work, determination, and good team leading, I think they would probably be in a very, very healthy position right now. And we'd probably be talking about how amazing that they were doing because of that. But because they had this kind of rot festering in, the leadership that, barely understands their own products. And again, they're not the only people to suffer from this. A whole bunch of these studios, EA, Activision, Blizzard King, all of these studios have had this constant issue with the high up employees knowing basically nothing about the content that they create, the games that they create, the audience that they have, the fan base that uses their products. They don't have a connection with those people. They're just money guys following general money, best practices when it comes to running a generalized business. And again, that works on literally anything. You can have somebody who can take over a banana stand, have absolutely no concept behind the product, but so long as they're following the kind of like the ABCs of good business practice, you can have it be successful. But there comes a point where you will hit a wall when your creativity hits nothing. And it's not that you can be that creative in a banana stand, but obviously when you're creating art, that becomes a lot more of a significant hurdle, especially when the how did it go with Baldur's Gate recently, and the guy commenting on it saying that don't expect this to be the new standard, right?
Right.
The standard has been raised. The bar has been raised consistently from the first Assassin's Creed game, from the first big successes that Ubisoft had. And yeah, that like ABCs of good basic business practices that worked back then, that doesn't work now because you're running into this kind of stuff, and the people who are making these decisions, who were behind making the first game, the Phoenix, Phoenix, what was it called? Phoenix?
Immortals, Phoenix Rising. Yeah.
Yes, Immortals, Phoenix Rising. So in that one, I think they had some really clever people there who looked at Zelda, who looked at Genshin Impact and said, we can do this. This is just a slightly more like kid-friendly-ish version of the Assassin's Creed stuff, with a little bit more like, theme park kind of stuff to do in the game. And hey, we could just like do this and pump it out. But I suspect strongly that the leadership that was behind making that game were not the C-level employees. It's probably a passion project that they threw together and said, hey, this can work. And then it gets the kibosh because those people might have been like moved around, or the leadership just decided, nah, that's not something we want to focus on right now. Why? Because I don't know, like insert random thought from a generalized C-suite employee, which sometimes doesn't make very much sense in the market. So
yeah. It's a shame.
It really is.
Maybe what Ubisoft needs to do is just sort of compress their size and just go back to making games that are based around teamwork and team ideas and maintaining that that team cohesion that you're getting at there, side, because that's what produces good games. Like Ubisoft used to do that to a great degree. Like I love a lot of Ubisoft's old games. Like I just mentioned Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. That's one of my top 5 favorite games I've ever played to this day, and it's because it had a keen sense of identity. It had an Ubisoft flavor. Now that Ubisoft has sort of grown so big, they all feel kind of samey. And it doesn't help that you're releasing, like I just said, 6 Assassin's Creed projects. You're working on 6 of them at the moment. So who knows? Maybe Avatar and Star Wars can begin to turn things around, because those do look like they have personality. But we'll have to see. All right. Let's move on to something which could be good, could be interesting. But I don't know. So this report comes out of a website that I've never heard of until today, called Giant Freaking Robot. You can decide for yourself whether or not that sounds like a trustworthy source to you. But, a whole bunch of video game and news outlets ran with it, including outlets like VG247, USA Today, and Eurogamer. Apparently, we're getting a Dark Souls anime, and it's coming to Netflix. According to them, like I said, as a website I've never heard of, they say it will be based on the events of the first game. And, apparently they have some credibility. Like Eurogamer, I was reading their report on their report, saying that they got Carl Urban being in Mortal Kombat 2, the movie. They got that right. But as far as anything else and why, we should consider anything else they say that's trustworthy, I don't know. It's not out of the realm of possibility, because, Netflix has been killing it when it comes to their video game adaptations. Castlevania, Arcane, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, all better than they had any right to be. And, that's not to forget shows like Cuphead, Sonic Prime, The Witcher, and they're also working on Bioshock, apparently Splinter Cell, and I'm reading this. It says they're working on a Beyond Good and Evil series. That's adorable.
I honestly think that that's probably what the creators of the game wanted in the first place. How much effort they put into that animation, how much effort and I bet you they looked at the Riot, TV show. League of Legends one, and they were like, we can be better than Arcane. We can do this. We can create something like better like that. There's a lot of envy when it comes to some developers when it comes to stuff like that, where it's like this creative idea, and then they get like really, really into it. And did you know that BioWare released a movie a few years ago?
What?
Yeah, BioWare released a full-on movie that went to movie theaters. It was not good.
Wait, what are you talking about?
I'm serious. There was a movie based in the Dragon Age universe that went to theaters, and it was god-awful.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't hear about that.
Nope. A lot of people didn't for very good reasons.
Okay.
I was talking with a friend who worked at the studio, and I was like, I had a family emergency come up, and I'm like, dude, I don't think I'm going to be able to come to the premiere. And he goes, dude, don't bother. Yeah. It's really terrible. And I was like, what do you mean it's really terrible? He's like, it's really, really terrible. So that was their own opinions of the people who worked on it. So
God.
Yeah. But I am excited for this Dark Souls anime because
Dark Souls.
I've always found that there's just too much dialogue in anime, so I can't wait because the amount of dialogue in the first Dark Souls game was like could fit on like a Post-it card. So I would imagine that the anime is just going to be like bunch of people fighting to the absolute edge of insanity. And that's it. And I think that would be great. I of course I understand that they're probably going to write something because there is a lot of writing. There's a lot of story that goes, and I'm being a little facetious for anybody who's like taking me seriously, going, you don't know the gloriful, the wonderful depth of the story in Dark Souls.
Yes.
Calm down. It's a joke. I'm not trashing them. There actually is a lot of story, and a lot of the story comes from the actual combat of the bosses and how they morph and change within the story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
the game. You can make an argument that Dark Souls is one of the top 10 deepest games ever made, like a series. Let's go with that. That's probably more accurate. Ever made, but that doesn't, for anybody who's ever played Dark Souls, that doesn't translate to narrative complexity in the way that it's traditionally understood. It doesn't play out like a movie.
It is difficult. Yeah, it's very, very difficult. There are a handful of fight scenes that do kind of like manage to do that really well, but it's few and far between, very difficult to get. So I wouldn't hold my breath essentially for there being a ton of them approaching the story, the narrative through the unspoken format.
No.
Because again, it can be done, but it is very difficult. I think what they're going to do is they're probably going to bring in some cool writers to create a story and then to have a lot more dialogue. So obviously that's going to be a thing. And I hope that they do that right. Because it is a tricky transition, and maybe maybe some of that combat, the narrative through combat flows,
Yeah, I would love it. And I have a feeling that this is what they might do. I would love a Dark Souls anime series that doesn't focus on, like it'll reference it, and there'll be a through line about the legend of the chosen undead, which is what the first Dark Souls game is about. But what I think they will do, like put a greater focus on, is telling stories about side characters from the game. So let's say episode 1 is about Solaire of Astora. Then I don't know who's another character from the game. Maybe Gwendolyn and his backstory, or like Seath the Scaleless. That would be interesting. Just their backstories. I would love something like that sort of expands upon the characters that are already there and makes certain things clearer. Although they will have to be careful about that, because so much about what makes the world of Dark Souls so alluring is the mystery and the fact that certain things are unconfirmed. If they're going to do sort of what I'm suggesting that they do, I hope that they don't outright confirm certain things that people have suspected for years. Like, for example, and this is going to be like a really deep cut for the big Dark Souls nerds, like, who was Gwyn's firstborn son? Is it the Nameless King from Dark Souls 3? Is it Solaire? Even though it's not Solaire. Guys, relax. I'm not suggesting it's Solaire. Don't get it. Don't go all aggro on me. But you get what I mean. I hope that they maintain that balance. And if, for whatever reason, they decide to go with the Legend of the Chosen Undead storyline, that they'll adapt it, they'll make it interesting, they'll put story in between all these different boss fights. But yeah, it's going to be tricky, man, and you'll have to bring people on that really understand the original Dark Souls game and really need to adapt it. Otherwise, it could be a total disaster. But let's just be optimistic. Let's just anything that's more Dark Souls. I want that. So, all right. And then finally, so I don't know anything about what's going on here. Please, what is going on?
Blue Protocol.
What's that?
So it is an anime MMO that's coming up shortly here.
Okay.
And they are just, it's being brought out by Amazon Studios. And Amazon Studios so far has had nothing but failures. Like, obviously, they put out a game and it was so badly received that they actually
brought it back into beta.
They unreleased it, and then they said, a couple months after that, yeah, we're just canceling the project. Then they had, New World, that was kind of a flop. They had Lost Ark, that was successful for, I would say about a month. About a month, people got really hyped for it. But then people started to discover that, well, and again, it's like, I gave them props at the time. I was like, hey, they actually have a limit on how much money you can spend. But then I found out that limit's actually $1,000 a day.
Hey, so it's sorry, just to push back for just a second. I'm just looking at the Steam charts right now, and I don't know what you would consider a success, but I'm looking at right now, and hold on, I just lost it. Lost Ark. It's at number 44 on the Steam charts, so that's around 20,000 people that are currently playing it. Is that
about half of that is bots?
Okay, well, fine. All right, good point.
So you gotta go way back. You gotta go way back into early in January of 2022. Back then, it had 1.3 million players playing this.
Oh God! Okay,
and that's just the English. That was the English server. This game is up in 3 other regions. 2 other regions, 3 other regions. I think it's in Japan, Russia, and Korea, of course. That's where it comes from. And then they released it, for the whole world. Now, again, all together, it was a really big game. But they have, again, like I said, started out being really good, got up to a lot of players, but then it had a significant drop off. And this is, again, Amazon Studios took this in, took control of it, and I would say ran it into the ground. So much so that the owner of the company, who's actually originally designed the game, the head of the studio in Korea, actually came out with an apology stream where he apologized for the bad experiences that people have been playing, and has committed to making the game better. And we don't know how that's going to work out. I think that it's a lost cause. I think the game is now toast. I think that it has been a complete failure. I've been ragging on it for months on the Twitter. On the Xer now, and it's just poor game design that started out being really good, had lots of potential, and then just nosedived so hard, so fast. And this is what appears to be happening with Blue Protocol. So Blue Protocol has launched in Japan, but because Amazon Studios has another game coming out this year, they didn't want to compete with that, so they pushed Blue Protocol back to next year's in everywhere else other than Japan. So the Asian market got it. They're playing it right now. They're having a lot of fun with it for the most part, but the North American version has been delayed till early next year. And then we've started to find out players have been watching the uploads. They've been watching some of the the new content. And this is where the new controversy settles in, which is the same controversy that Amazon Studios has had in the past with all of the other games that they've released, is that they are censorship heavy. Like I don't know why they went to I'm not going to use that example. It's going to get people mad at me. They are censorship very heavy, and they have now censored a whole bunch of outfits in the game that are pretty they're pretty normal. Like, they're normal outfits, but they've just removed them from the North American game. And not only that, they have removed a face preset in the game.
Why?
Stating that it was too attractive.
Okay. I gotta look this up.
The face preset they've removed is actually the most popular for that body type. So there's like multiple body types. There's like 4 different body types of characters that you can pick. But for that particular body type, it's the most popular one in Japan. And Amazon Studios has decided to just, we're not letting North America play with this one. That face is way too cute on that body type. That is just unacceptable. She looks like she's attractive. I don't know if that's the reason why. They've said that they're trying to make sure that they get a T rating. They want the T rating, and if there's any overly provocative things, like, for example, young girls having skirts on, because that's a weird thing to say that's a problem of. But yeah, the girls can't have skirts, and we're not talking like mini skirts. We're talking like schoolgirl skirts.
Yeah.
So, which again, for people who were, had any experience with private schools or Catholic schools or uniform schools, that's a pretty normal thing. And Mooney, she loves wearing outfits like this, and she kind of looked at it, and it's like, they basically, we made the observation that if Mooney was put into this game as a character, Amazon would have just banned everything about her. And that's where, again, I take this like super personally, but I'm trying not to get like too angry about this. But I take this like hyper personally, because it's like, instead of just letting players play and have fun and make their own choices, Amazon Studios is saying, oh, no, we can't allow you to have this, again, face preset. The way that the face is shaped, not because it's like there's something wrong with it, but because it's apparently too cute. It's so bizarre and so weird, and comes off as just really, really creepy. And then they lied about it because they said that they're trying to get the T rating. I don't know if you've done any Googling recently on the Play Store for T-rated games. That's rated T for teen by the ESRB. Did you know that Nikkei Goddess of Victory was a T game?
I don't even know what that is.
So Nikkei Goddess of Victory is a shooter, is like a 2D shooter where you control this army of girl characters that are shooting these alien robots, and they're behind cover, but the camera's conveniently positioned slightly behind and slightly low to the ground.
Okay.
And when the girls are fighting the machine guns, their bodies tend to jiggle a little bit. Okay. Not a little bit. Obviously, it's a lot, because that's what everybody knows this game as. And it's like hilariously insane. That game has a T rating. There's a bunch of other games that have a T rating that have way more provocative stuff than what was in the base version. So what we're seeing them lie about why they're doing this for no apparent reason that makes any sense. And so that's what the drama, that's what the anger is about. There's a lot of people are now like swearing off the game, going, well, we're not touching this. Amazon, they're encouraging extreme censorship for no apparent reason, and it's kind of blown up in their faces a little bit. And I find that it blowing up in their faces. I find that really funny because, like I said, I'm insulted by the changes that they've done, because again, a lot of the changes don't make any sense. There is some conversation to be had about, like, when you give players a character creator, like how sexy do some people make them, but I find the argument to be very very rude and very like stupid at times, and this is especially a scenario with this right now that I am absolutely furious about, because as some people who've been listening to the channel for a long time knows, I hate censorship.
Sure.
I hate censorship not because I want, because it's art, and because censorship never works. Like, it just never works the way that you want it to. Japan tried to censor every lewd thing that they could possibly think of, that was in their minds as something that anybody that was being experienced by any other country on the planet. They looked at a bunch and said, we're going to censor it all. Hard censorship. Absolutely no. You can't draw any kind of like person love scenes at all. Well, we got squid type creatures and high school girls out of that. Congratulations. Censorship doesn't work. You can't, it just doesn't work. So when I see these companies, when I see corporations, when I see individuals screaming for censorship, it's always like, that what you're doing is going to backfire in a bizarre way that you're not going to be able to understand or address, and it's just going to blow up in your face. And at the same time, all you're doing is hurting and stomping on artists. And in some cases, I would say especially when a big company goes to a country that has a unique culture and says, hey, we're going to buy some of this art. And, oh, by the way, we're going to censor it all because you guys are all perverts. And then they take the art, they splash a bunch of bad paint on it and say, you can't see this now because you're all perverts. It's like, that comes off as so, the word colonialism gets thrown around a lot, I think, unnecessarily. But that to me really does come across as like colonialistic thinking, where it's like, hey, we're going to go into a place, take art from people who create games, who create, very good stories. I would say, hands down, Japan has, some of the best story writing I've seen in the last like 100 years of literature. Like, it really is, really good stuff.
Yeah.
And we could go on about like Vinland Saga and all these other anime episodes that are shows that do that well. The Berserk series, like all this stuff where it's like, it's deep, it's cool, it's interesting. Of course, Metal Gear. It's like, there's so much there that has so much potential. And then you have a big giant company like Amazon that walks in like a drunk mech, crushes a whole bunch of stuff and says, we're just going to erase what you're doing here and erase what you're doing there, and we're just going to delete this and delete that, and we're just going to pump this out, and we're going to change a bunch of the things that they're saying. It's like, that is wholly insulting to art as a whole. You don't just delete art because you don't like it, or you think that it's not going to sell as good, especially when it's the best-selling thing right now. Manga has outsold comic books in the entire world. You can't look at manga and say, oh, well, their success is really just a fluke, and we just need to censor and change everything that's in it so that it becomes more in line with our comic books that we're selling over here that haven't sold a copy in months. It's like, maybe you're coming at this from a completely wrong angle. So that's my rant on it. I get so annoyed when I see this stuff. I'm very passionate about it because, again, art, video games are art, stories are art. You shouldn't censor them unless they're like directly breaking an act, like a significant law. And even when you do that, you have to be aware that if a culture is finding something to be great and they're listing that as a great work of art, it's best to understand why before trying to stamp it out, because when you just try to stamp it out, you get really bad things happen, or sometimes really weird things happen. Japan being a country that went from absolutely no sandwich making content whatsoever being allowed to the point where it's now 10% of their GDP. It's like
that's not. Okay. It's true, guys. It's true.
it's like that doesn't work. And if you want to address that, you have to come at it from a logical, calm, rational sense of like allowing culture to kind of like morph with stuff as it goes, and then try to like, not put your thumb on the scale. But when you're a company doing it, when you're a giant corporation doing it, it's worse than if you're like, a cultural group from within the borders doing it, or a government, mandated voters going, we don't want this thing here. And they're all, voting, overwhelmingly for rules and stuff like that. It's like that's not what's happening here. It's a giant corporation who's just stamping stuff and then lying about it, where they're like, well, we need to hit a T for teen rating, and there's jiggle physics in the game, and we need to remove those jiggle physics because we can't get it. No game can pass, a T rating with jiggle physics, except for the 5 games that have released in the last 2 months with jiggle physics. It's like, pretty sure you're lying.
At least send it off to them and see if that's the case. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But if that's the case, that's ridiculous. Man, Syb, I'm still just trying to wrap my head around how a face can be too cute.
Again, that's what we were told, because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's a face preset. It doesn't change the chest or the rump or anything like that. It's a face setting. It's like, is the face setting too, like, does she have like a bit of a too much of a seductive look on her from time to time when she's in like some kind of like pose or something? Like, but they didn't elaborate on that. Nobody's elaborating on it. Instead, they're saying, well, we can't get it past the T for T rating if we have this in the game. And again, it's like everybody's calling them out going, nah, pretty sure you're lying here. And it's pretty disgusting. So
yeah. I have a hard time believing that if I look at this anime chick's face, that I'm going to turn into a hikikomori otaku who just puts pictures of anime girls all over my walls. I mean, my wife wouldn't like that, but right.
Yeah, so
it's ridiculous. I agree with you, man. It's the same song and dance. Censorship is bad. It's even when I'm sorry. I'm assuming you're probably not going to end up playing it then.
Right now I think unless they revert this stuff, I'm not touching this at all, because the stupidity and the arrogance of anybody to just come in and say this, because again, it's like what they went through on the list, what they showcased in the list was just so egregious in the sense of like, they've just described my wife. So like that's just insulting on like so many levels, and I didn't like, she's not 18 years old. She is not even close to that. I love her to death. And you're telling me that everything about her needs to be censored because of the way that she was born. It's like, okay, well, y'all need to, I'm not impressed with that kind of talk. I'm not impressed with that behavior. And I get, very angry with it. And I am very angry with this. I at the current moment, no, I'm not touching Blue Protocol. At this point, I'm not touching any more Amazon games. At this point, I feel that the studio needs to be written off, because they're making rules for people who either, like, again, we've seen this how many times. It's like they're catering to people who don't even play their games. They're catering to a handful of people who make a complaint on Twitter. I've seen companies bend over backwards because 3 people, and it's not even 3 people, it's one person with 2 sock puppet accounts, came and made a complaint. And it's like, that's not your market. And I mean, how many times have we seen that just this year? It's like things are happening at a nearly breakneck pace, with companies going, turns out that, listening to a bunch of idiots who don't actually buy our products is actually bad for business. Like, who knew, right? Yeah. So I think Amazon games, I removed everything from my wish list that was even remotely connected to them. And at this point, I'm saying, no, I am not touching Amazon Studios. They have a board of censorship that would make
Mal blush. Yeah.
Yeah, make Mal blush, or make Orson Welles turn over in his grave again. And I'm not going to support a company that does that.
You mean George Orwell?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
George Orwell.
Yeah.
Not Orson
Welles.
I don't think he was a great actor, though.
Yeah. I don't think he'd be capable of turning over in his grave with how fat he was. All right. On the bright side, it's just one less game that we have to attend to, and there's a whole bunch of other games that we have to get through over the next few months. That's one thing to keep in mind, guys, when all the negative news is sort of making you want to brood that there's a lot of great games coming out. So let's focus on that. Anyways, guys, that's it for this episode of Maximum News. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Make sure to hit that like button, because when you do that, it tells the YouTube algorithm that not only this video, but all the other videos on the Triple S League channel are worth watching. And make sure you leave a comment if you have any thoughts, criticisms about anything that Syb and I said. Just make sure to be civil. And I guess I don't have to ask you to talk about the main Triple S League channel anymore, because we're broadcasting on the main Triple S League channel.
Yeah, we're giving it a try. Again, apologies for the back and forth on this. This is not our choice. This is YouTube. That basically said, hey, stop doing live streams on your main channel. Stop doing long form podcast content on your main channel. And then a year later, they say, hey, why aren't you doing long form content on your main channel anymore? And it's you told us not to. So again, we apologize for this. We're going to try this. Hopefully get it to work. We always appreciate anybody who's listening for the first time. I hope you enjoyed our I hope you found it insightful, sometimes ranty content, and yeah, check that out. Mm-hmm. And just one more thing. Do you want to do a little bet with me? Do you think that Skull and Bones is actually going to release this time, or are they going to magically rug pull it right before it hits on the, I think it's supposed to be the 25th of August?
Oh, they're going to release it, dude.
Are you sure?
Well, maybe not on the August the 25th, but sorry, I thought your original point was whether or not it's going to release, period.
Well, I mean, at this point, that's kind of a thing. But I'm like, okay, they're going for the release this time. We've had how many release dates with this?
Mm.
I don't know. We'll see.
It's a bold move, Cotton. Considering what Starfield comes out less than 2 weeks later.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm not a betting man. I'll just guess that they're probably going to move it, because why not? Yeah. And you guys could just find me on all the regular forms of social media, just at Max Derrat. I'll put links to that in the description box below as well. And make sure to check out Scenometry, Ash's channel, where he talks about Futurama and all the kick-ass stuff that he's doing over there. He's been doing really well. I'll put links to that as well. Thanks, guys. And until we do this again next week, I want to remind you, as always, and as per usual, stay yellow.
Goodbye.